Here is something most people don't tell you about starting a podcast. Recording an episode is not the hard part. Almost anyone can sit down, press record, and get through the first episode. There is adrenaline, there is novelty, and there is that feeling of finally doing the things that you have been thinking about for months. The hard part is episode two. Because after episode one, the adrenaline is gone, the novelty has worn off a little, you're staring at a blank document, trying to figure it out what to record next. And if you do not have a plan, that blank document wins. You tell yourself you will figure it out later, but that later becomes a week, and that week becomes two. So then the gap gets big enough that starting again feels harder than it did the first time. This is the pattern that I see over and over. It is not a motivational problem, it is a planning problem. The fix is super straightforward. Do not plan one episode at a time. Plan your first three as a set before you even record any of them. When you do have 3 episodes outlined and ready to go, episode 2 is not a blank document problem. It is already solved. You already know what are you recording, and all you have to do is show up. So the podcasters who made it past the 5 episodes are never the most talented ones. They are the ones who plan far enough that stopping was never really an option. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to plan these episodes in 4 steps. And by the end of the video, you're going to have a clear audience, a format, a 3-episode starter arc with an outline, a structure that you can use forever. So let's go. Step 1, pick up one clear audience, not a demographic, not a category. One specific type of person whose life is going to be a little bit better because of your podcast exists. And I want to push you a little bit here because this is the step where most people stay too broad. My podcast is for entrepreneurs. My podcast is for people interested in health. My podcast is for small business owners. Those are not audiences, those are categories. And the problem with categories is that when you sit down to plan an episode, a category does not tell you anything specific about what that person needs to hear right now. So here is the test I can use. I can picture a specific person sitting down to listen to your show. Not a type, a person. Where are they? What are they dealing with this week? What questions do they have that they have not been able to get a clear answer to? When you can answer that, you have an audience. Let me give you some examples of how this shift looks in practice. Entrepreneurs becomes first-time founders who are trying to figure it out how to get their first 10 customers without marketing budget. For people interested in health becomes busy parents in their 30s who want to feel better but do not have time to complete lifestyle overhaul. Some are small business owners, becomes local service businesses, plumbers, electricians, landscapers who want to use content marketing but have no idea where to start. So you feel the difference. The specific version gives you a topic filter. Before you plan any episode, you can ask, will this specific person care about this right now? If the answer is yes, it is on the list. If no, it goes in the parking lot for a different show. And here is the thing that surprises people. Going more specific does not shrink your audience, it grows it. Because a specific content gets shared. When someone hears a podcast and thinks this is exactly for people like me, they send it to every other person exactly like them. The more specific your audience, the more powerful your content resonates with the right people. And the more likely they are to share it with everyone they know who fits that same description. So before you move to step number 2, write down one sentence. My podcast is bracket specific person who is dealing with bracket specific situation or challenge. That sentence is your North Star for every planning decision that follows. Step number 2, pick a format. And I want to give you my permission right now not to overthink this, which is what most of us do. We overthink things. There are 3 formats worth considering for your first 3 podcasts: solo, interview, question and answer. I have covered each of these in detail in another video, so the link is in the description. But for the purpose of planning your first 3 episodes, here is the short version. Solo episodes, 10 to 15 minutes, just you, one topic, one clear takeaway, are the fastest to produce and the easiest to batch. You do not need to coordinate with anyone. You do not need to wait on a calendar invite. You just need an idea in a quiet room if you have an unpredictable schedule or you want to be able to record without dependencies on other people. Solo is your format. Now, for the interview episodes, 20 to 30 minutes, you and a guest are great if conversations are where your best thinking happens, or if you want to build a network while you build the show. The trade off is logistics. Scheduling, prep, follow up, interviews take more coordination. If you have a strong network and enjoy the back and forth of conversations, the payoff is worth it. So the Q&As, or also known as questions and answers episodes, answers 3 to 5 questions per episode. Usually are batched in one sitting. Works best if you already have people asking you things. Clients, followers, inbox messages. If your audience is already handing you content, use it. So, and here is the decision shortcut. For your first 3 episodes, pick the format that you can produce during your worst week of the month. Not your best week, your worst one. Because at some point in your first episodes, a worst week, it's coming. And your format needs to survive it. And one more thing, you can always change formats later. This is not a permanent commitment. It is a starting. The goal right now is to pick something and move. For your first 3 episodes, the right format, it's not the most impressive one. It is the one that is still possible when everything else in your life is demanding your attention. Step 3 is the one that changes everything. It's the starter arc. Here is the problem with planning episodes one at a time. Each episode feels like a standalone decision. What should this one be about? Is this interesting enough? Is this too basic? Is this too advanced? Every episode is a blank page problem. The starter arc solves that by giving you first 3 episodes a job to do together. So instead of 3 random topics, you have a mini series that builds on itself, like the Worker's Creator. Each episode in the arc has one assignment. Episode 1, the problem. This episode names the main challenge your specific audience is dealing with, not your solution, not your method, just the problem. So when the problem is stated clearly and specifically enough that your listening thinks, yes, that it is exactly what I'm struggling with. Why start here? Because before anyone will listen to your answer, they need to believe you understand their question. Episode 1 is how you earn their trust. A real example, if your podcast is for first-time home buyers, episode 1 might be called Why Buying Your First Home Feels So Much More Complicated Than It Should Be. You're not teaching anything. You are just naming the experience so accurately that the right listener feels genuinely seen. So now in episode 2, we focus on the process. Now that your listener knows you understand the problem, this episode introduces the approach. Not everything you know, one clear method, framework, or way of thinking that starts to move them towards a solution. This is where you establish that point of view, not here is what the internet says. Here is how I think about this. Here is the approach I have found actually works. Using the same example of episode 2 for home buyers podcast might be the 3 things that actually determines what you can afford and why most people focus on the wrong one. You are giving them a framework that reorganizes how they think about the problem. Episode 3 focus on the next step. So this episode is the most practical one. No big ideas, no frameworks, just one specific actionable thing your listener can do this week to move forward. Not a list of 10 things, one thing. The one that matters most right now, given where they are in their journey. So for home buyers example, episode 3 might be something like the first conversation to have before you talk to a realtor and why most people have it too late. Concrete, specific, something they can do this week. So 3 episodes, one problem, one process, one next step. Together, they tell a complete story. And individually, each one is strong enough to be someone's first episode, no matter which one they find first. So the last part matters a lot. People are not going to find your podcast in order. Someone might discover you through episode 3 and then go back and listen to episode 1. The arc should work both ways as a sequence for people who start at the very beginning or as a standalone episode for people who land in the middle. The way you make it work is by making each episode self contained while still connecting to a bigger thread. The episode 1 stands alone as a problem episode. Episode 2 stands alone as a strategy episode. And episode 3 stands alone as an action episode. But if someone listens to all of them, they get the complete journey. That is the starter arc. And once you have it, you'll find that episode 4 through 8 almost plan themselves because you already have established the pattern. Step 4, the 5-bullet outline. Write a tiny outline, not on a script, an outline. The distinction matters more than it sounds. A script is something you read, an outline is something you follow. And those two things produce completely different results on camera. When you read from a script, your listener can hear it. Not because you are a bad reader, but because your reading produces a different rhythm than speaking. When you read from a script, your listener can hear it. Not because you are a bad reader, but because reading produces a different rhythm than speaking. The sentences are more complete. The pauses land in the wrong places. The energy is slightly flatter. And the whole thing sounds slightly performed. When you follow an outline, you're still talking. You know where you're going and you know your 3 main points, but the words are coming out in a real time. That is what it makes delivery sound natural. That is what makes people feel like they are in a conversation with you instead of listening to a presentation. So here is the 5-bullet outline structure I want you to use for each of your 3 first episodes. Bullet 1 is the hook. One sentence that names exactly what this episode is about and why it matters right now. Not a question, not a mysterious teaser, just a clear, direct statement of value. By the end of this episode, you will know exactly what to do before you talk to your first realtor. This is a hook. So the bullet 2, 3, and 4, your 3 main points. These are the 3 things you want your listener to walk away knowing. Keep each one of to a sentence or 2 in your outline. You are not writing and content in here. You are just making the stops on the route so you do not get lost on the way. Bullet 5, one example, one next step, one story or scenario that makes the main idea concrete, and one specific action the listener can take this week. Not a summary, not a recap, just here is what to do, here is where to start. 5 bullets. That is your whole outline. You can write it in 10 minutes and give it enough structure to record yourself without sounding stiff. And here is the thing about outlines versus scripts that I want you to really feel. The moment in a recording where you sound most like yourself are usually the moments where you go slightly off outline, where you remember a better example mid-sentence and you just use it, where you laugh at something you did not expect to say. Those moments do not appear in a script. They exist in a conversation. Your outline is what gives you enough structure to let those moments happen. As an outline keeps you on track without putting you in a cage, 5 bullets, it's all the structure you need to record confidently and still sound like yourself. Okay, 4 steps. Let's run them through them quickly. Step 1 is one clear audience, not a category, a specific person with a specific situation. Write the sentence. My podcast is for bracket who is dealing with bracket what. Step 2 is one repeatable format, solo for speed and flexibility, interview for connection and networking building, Q&A for relevance and efficiency. Pick the one that survives the worst week. Step 3 is the starter arc. Episode 1 names the problem, episode 2 introduces the process, and episode 3 delivers the next step. Together, they form a complete journey. Individually, they each stand alone. Step 4, a 5-bullet outline for each episode. Hook, 3 points, one example, one next step. Write all 3 outlines before you record any of them. If you do those 4 things before you sit down to record episode 2, it's not a blank page problem anymore. It is already waiting for you. If this was useful, subscribe. I put out videos like this regularly for podcasters and content creators who are building something they can actually sustain. I also write a free weekly Substack that goes deeper on podcast strategies, episode planning, format guides, and industry-specific playbooks. Link is in the description. And generally, if you want to share your starter arc in the comments, I will read it. Tell me your audience, your format, and your 3 episode titles, and I'll give you a real feedback. Plan your 3 episodes, write your outlines, then press record. The blank page is the only thing standing between you and that episode 2. So see you on the next one.